can pull your shirt tail out or your collar.
I don't have it, honey.
Oh, that's fine.
I am going to continue doing a taping on Revelation chapter 12, verses 7 and following. And we'll be doing this in Greek, along with a translation and a grammatical analysis. And so I'm picking up at verse 7. This is after we saw in chapter 12, the first few verses up to verse 6, that the dragon coming after the woman, and the woman representing, I believe, the church that is being pursued by the Emperor Domitian and the emperor worship and all of that. So at verse 7 it reads, Kaiagenata palamas into urano. And there was war in heaven. Agenata is your aorist indicative middle third person singular from genomai. Michael, ha Mikael, kai hoi angeloi autu, tu palamesai metatu dragantas, kai ha dragon epalemesen kai hoi angeloi autu. That is Michael and his angels. Michael was the chief angel that actually was a good angel on the side of God, and he and his angels were told to fight with the dragon. Palemesai is from palemeo, aorist active infinitive from palemeo, with the dragon, and the dragon, Epalemesen, fought and his angels. Epalemesen is from, again, palemeo, the aorist indicative active third person singular from palemeo. So the dragon fought and his angels, kai uk eskusen ude tapas hurethe auton eti into urano. And there was not sufficient, but there was not, can we say, a place for them, a sufficient place for them was found in heaven, again, yet in heaven. And so there was no longer any place for them. Iskusen is the aorist indicative active third person singular from iskumai, and there was no longer found from heurisco, aorist indicative passive third person singular, for them a place in heaven. Kai eblethe ha dragon ha megas ha aphes ta archaias ha kalumenas diabolos kai ha satanas ha planon ten oikumenein halen eblethe eis ten gain kai hoi angeloi autu met autu eblethe son. That is, as we read on, and there was not found a place for them in heaven, and the dragon, the great dragon, the old serpent, was cast out, or thrown down, was cast down from balo, aorist indicative passive third person singular, was cast down. And we're going back to Genesis chapter 3, the old serpent being Satan. Ha kalumenos diabolos, the one being called the devil and Satan. Satan means the opponent, Satan, of God. And kaleo is the verb to call. Here we have the one being called, the present passive participle from kaleo, the devil, the slanderer, and Satan, ha planon tain oikamenen halen, the one who is deceiving all the earth. And planon is your present participle nominative masculine singular from planeo. So the one who is deceiving all the earth. And that is still going on today, by the way. Satan is the deceiver of the whole earth, was cast ablethe unto the earth. This is from Balo. Again, aorist indicative passive third person singular from Balo. And his angels with him were cast down or were thrown down. Eblatheson from Balo again, aorist indicative passive third person plural. So this is this battle in heaven that took place probably before the creation of humankind, I would assume. And John is speaking about it here. Kai ekusa phonein megale into urano legusan, and I heard a great voice in heaven saying. Ekusa is from akuo, the aorist indicative active first person singular. I heard a great voice in heaven saying, and notice legusan is your present participle, accusative feminine singular from lego. Arti agenata he soteria kahe dunamis kahe basilea tu theu hemon kahe exousia tu Christu autu hati ablethe ha kategor ton adelphon hemon ha kategoron autus enopian tu theu hemon hemeras kai nuktas. And there was, or there came to be, or salvation has come to be, and power. Agenata is your aorist indicative middle, third person singular from genomai. Salvation and power has happened. Now is the song. And the kingdom, Habasilea tu theu hemon, and the kingdom of our God, and the authority of his Christ. Notice the two are put together. The kingdom of God and the authority of Christ. Hate ablete ha kategor ton adelphon hemon. That is, the accuser of the brethren was thrown down or was cast down. Again, aorist indicative passive third person singular from Balo. The one who accuses them before God day and night. Ha kategoron from kategoreo. The one who is accusing, present participle nominative masculine singular, day and night. So this is a song of rejoicing that God's great salvation has now occurred. And John is picturing this because Satan, the accuser of the brethren, has been cast down and is really defeated. Satan is already defeated by Christ and by his glorious death and resurrection. So John goes on, Kai autoi Enikesan autan dia tahaima tu arneu, kai dia tan lagan tes marturias auton, kai uk agape san tem suchen auton arki thanatu. That is, and these conquered him. Uh, these conquered him, that is, Satan, through the blood of the Lamb. It is through the blood of Christ that Satan has been defeated and brought to an end. And notice Anike san, again, aorist indicative active third person plural from Nikao, and on account of the word of their testimony. That is, those who have spoken the truth, even to the point of their own lives being attacked by no doubt the emperor worship and all that was going on. Kai uk agape san tain psuchen auton arki thanatu. They did not love their life even unto death. Agape son is from agapao, the aorist indicative active third person plural, from agapao. On account of this, dia tuta hu rhineste hoi uranoi, kai hoi en autois skenuntes, uai tain gain, kai tain thalasan, hate katebe ha diabolos pras humon, ekon thumon megan, eidos hate allegon kairan eke. On account of this, rejoice, O heavens. Hurinus then is your present middle imperative second person plural from hurino. So rejoice, O heavens, and those who dwell in them. Hoi skenuntes is from skenao. It is your present participle active nominative masculine plural from skenao. So the heavens and those that dwell in them are to rejoice, but woe, woe to you, O earth and sea, because the devil has been cast down to you, or has come down to you in great wrath. Katebe from katabino, the aorist indicative active third person singular from katabino. So the devil has come down to you having great wrath. Ekon is your present participle nominative masculine singular from echo. Knowing a dose that he is having a little time. So the devil has come down to the earth, John is saying, knowing that his time is short. And that was going on in the first century, I believe, with the attack that he was bringing upon the believers through the emperor worship of that time, and really has gone on all through time. And so we see here both a rejoicing and a warning about what Satan is up to. So in verse 13, John continues, Kai hate eden hadragon hate ablethe eis tain gain, ideuxin tain gunaika hetes hetekin tan arsena. And when the dragon saw that he was cast down, that he was thrown down into the earth, he then pursued the woman which bore the child, the male child. Ablethe again is your aorist indicative passive from Balo. And the dragon was cast down upon the earth, and he pursued from Dioko, another aorist indicative active third person singular from Dioko. He pursued the woman which bore or had borne the child from Tikdo, another aorist indicative active third person singular from Tikdo. And the text goes on, Kai Adathe san te gunaiki hai duo teteruges tu etu tu megalu hena petatai estain ereman estan tapan autes hapu trefetai ake kairan kai karus kai hemiso kairu apa prasopu tu apheos. And that is, but the woman, and there was given uh, 2 wings of a great eagle to the woman in order that she might fly into the wilderness from the serpent, that she might be able to get away into the wilderness, unto her place where she is nourished there for a time, times, and a half a time from the presence of the serpent. Notice as we look at this, Adathe san is your aorist indicative passive third person plural from didomi, and they were given to the woman, that is 2 wings of a great eagle were given to her that she might fly. From Petamai, the present subjunctive middle third person singular, that she might fly into the desert unto her place where she is nourished, where she is being nourished. Here again we have trefo, present indicative passive, third person singular from trefo, where she is being nourished a time, times, and a half a time from the serpent, which would be probably the same idea of the 3.5 years. And again, we had commented on how many understand this to be a reference back to the Antiochus Epiphanes as a type of persecution that is now being carried out because he persecuted the Jewish people for 3.5 years. And some would apply this times and a half a time to that. Other interpreters apply it to the future tribulation period, which they understand to be 3.5 years, at least half of it. So those are the 2 ideas that commentators have come up with. So in verse 15, Kai ebalin ha aphes ek tu stamatas autu ha piso tes gunaikas hudor hos pataman hena autain pata ma foretan poiese. So verse 15 then, but the serpent cast forth or poured forth out of his mouth after the woman water as a river out of his mouth, in order that he might make her like swept away by a river or by a flood. And so the serpent cast out of his mouth. Ebalin is from balo again, aorist indicative active, third person singular. Cast out of his mouth behind the woman water as a river. In other words, he's trying to overflow her as a flood from a river in order that he might sweep her away with the flood, in order that he might make her like swept away by the river. Poiese is your aorist subjunctive, third person singular from poieo, that he might make her like rivers swept away. And then in verse 16 it continues, Kai eba ethe son he ge te gunaiki, kai enoixin he ge, tastoma altes kai katepien, tan pataman han ebalin ha dragon, ek tu stamatas au tu. But the earth helped the woman. In other words, the earth came to help the woman and the earth opened its mouth and swallowed the river, or devoured the river. Swallowed the river, I guess we could translate this, which the dragon had cast out of his mouth. Notice, or it poured forth out of his mouth. Kai ebba etheson is from ba etheo. It is the aorist indicative active, third person singular, and the earth helped the woman, or gave help to the woman, and opened its mouth. Anoixin is from anoigo, aorist indicative active, third person singular, opened her mouth and swallowed the river. In other words, the earth is going to swallow up the river. Notice the symbolism here of John describing really the defeat of Satan and the protection of the church, and especially in what was going on under the emperor worship, but even through time, which the dragon cast. Ebalin is your aorist indicative active, third person singular from balo, out of his mouth. So the Satan is now turning against the woman, and this would be believers in Christ who are part of the imagery, can we say, of the woman as well. And looking at the attack that no doubt was going on in the first century under Domitian worship, under emperor worship, but continues all the way through time. And so we move on then to verse 17. Kai horgiste ha dragon epite gunaiki kai apeothen poiesai paleman metaton loipon tu spermatas autes ton terunton tas intalas tu seu kai ekanton ten marturian Jesu. Then the dragon was angry with the woman, and it went off or departed to make war with the rest of her seed. That is, Satan did not defeat Christ, because Christ, born by, can I say, coming out of the woman, that is the Jewish uh, believers, and then coming out of that, he then was not able to be defeated by Satan. So Satan now turns and goes after her seed, which would have reference to the believers at that time that have continued after the victory of Christ in his death and resurrection. So Satan, the dragon, was angry from orgidzo, aorist indicative passive third person singular, at the woman and departed or went off to make war with the rest. Apeothen is from apergamai, aorist indicative active third person singular, went off to make. Poieo is the root, aorist active infinitive, to make war with the rest of her seed. And I'm assuming he's talking about the believers in the early church. And so, since Christ has defeated Satan and ascended back to heaven, now the attack is going against her seed. And John is trying to describe, no doubt, what was happening because of the emperor worship system that was being enforced upon Christians, believers. So we move on and said that it was with the rest of her seed who were keeping the commandments of God. Terun ton is from tereo, your present participle genitive plural from tereo. So they were seeking to keep the commandments of God and the testimony of Jesus. They were seeking to be faithful, keeping the testimony of Jesus. And Satan is now, John is saying, attacking them, and no doubt doing it through what was then the emperor worship system, which could be a type of what goes on all through time, even including the final eschaton. And so we come to the last verse, kai estathe epi ten aman tes thalases, and he stood upon the sand of the sea. And now he's going to see a beast arising out of the sea. Estathe is from histemi, the aorist indicative passive third person singular from histemi. He stood upon the sand of the sea, and the beast begins to come out. So as we move into chapter 13, I believe we'll see the beast as the emperor worship and a revived Nero, so to speak, that John is referring to, and those that were supporting that, and how it's going to impact the church. They cannot buy or sell because the picture of the emperor was on every coin. And we'll talk about that as we get into chapter 13. But basically, I think the thought is Satan and his angels have been defeated and cast down. And he was not able to defeat Christ, who conquered death and is now ascended back to the Father. So he's turned his fury, that is Satan, against the church and against the woman, referring to the Christian believers, I believe. And now he's attacking them. And as John was writing, it would seem to have reference to what's going on with emperor worship and the system that was saying, if you don't bow down and worship Domitian, then you will be under persecution, economic, etc., as well as physical persecution. And so Satan is after the woman, the remaining believers, we could say, after the ascension of Christ. And this is followed then, as we'll see later in chapter 13, by a description of the beast that comes up out of the sea, which uh, I think we'll talk about that, which seems to look actually two beasts. The one being a Nero revived, representing probably Domitian in what he's doing, and the second being those who were supporting him. And the result is the Christians then are persecuted, and John is writing to describe not only what's happening, but how Satan is behind all of this. And there really is a satanic trinity here, Satan, followed by the beast, the two beasts, we could say. And he's going to describe this. And in the midst of it, the believers will come out victorious. And we'll see that in the Song of the 144,000, which seem to refer to the Israel of God, believers who are someday seen ultimately victorious in the presence of the Lord. So let me stop there as we're trying to work through this in the Greek, uh, and also trying to give some interpretation as we're doing it.